watching Property TV.
Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. I'm Stephen GALPIN and this is the programme where you can have your property related questions answered by our team of property experts. And joining me today is Hayley Andrews, CEO of Your Freedom Empire, investor, developer and educator. Welcome Hayley.
Thank you for having me.
Good to see you again. And with you is John Howard, property developer, investor, author, broadcaster and various other things too.
Thank you, Stephen. Good to be back.
Good to have you. Interested to hear what you have to say with your questions, knowledgeable as ever.
Thank you.
So there we are. Hayley, I'm going to start with you. When investing in rental properties, would the panel suggest as a first-time entrant to the industry, I should invest in my own local areas or spread my investment across the country to ensure mitigation of risk in any one of the area's ups and downs?
Good question. So it's quite common when you're first starting out, if it works within your local area, to actually start in your local area. But as you grow your portfolio, you definitely do want to diversify and you want to spread your risk. So you don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket and just focus on one area, for example. So I suppose the question really, to put it back, is to kind of say, well, does it work? You know, first of all, make sure...
You're asking me to answer it.
Yeah. So just make sure that it works within your area. If that gives you more confidence, then great. You know the area, you know more people within that area, you perhaps have tradesmen, etc. Competent management companies. It really depends on the strategy that you're looking to adopt, and if it works for you from a yield perspective. Does it, is it going to produce the yield that you want? Not everybody has the luxury of being able to start in the area that they live. And as you know, Stephen, I work a lot with internationals who are not living or working here in the UK. So they have to be comfortable to invest without having ever going to see the property. So as long as you have boots on the ground, good competent teams in place, you do the research, you're happy with the margins, you meet your benchmarks, it doesn't really matter. So at some point you are going to have to be comfortable with spreading your risk, and you're not always going to be the expert in that particular area.
I suppose the question, if we look at it carefully, is talking about somebody who's entering the industry for the first time. And I suppose another way of looking at it could be that if you do stay within your local area, at least you do have the choice of either managing it yourself or putting the management out to somebody else.
And that's why a lot of people will stay local. If the numbers work, they'll stay local. I did. So when I first started out, I researched the whole of the UK.
What a surprise! What a surprise!
And I came up with 3 areas that worked for me. The strategies that I was looking to adapt worked. There was demand. All things like that ticked all of those boxes. And one of the areas that worked for me was my local area. So the bulk of my portfolio is within 1 hour's drive of where I live. But that's not to say that I don't invest anywhere else within the UK as well. I do. So I think it comes down to confidence more than anything else. A lot of people, when they're first starting out, will want to stay local. But you don't have to, at the end of the day, as long as you've got confidence in the teams on the ground. I have a portfolio in Liverpool. I've owned it for 10 years and I've never seen it. So as long as you do the research, the numbers stack up, and you have good, solid people on the ground to implement and exercise that strategy, it doesn't matter.
When you're doing your research, how much do you let potential events, things like HS2 or in London, say for instance, Crossrail, how much do you let those kind of factors influence your decision?
I don't let them influence my decision at all. So I look for it, but I don't invest solely for that purpose. So I will look at where the money is being spent and follow those areas, but it has to work for me from day one.
now.
Yes, now.
Yeah, I think
So
that's absolutely
and
right.
then
yeah.
if I get, it's a bonus if that comes to fruition.
I think the other thing is a lot of these areas, you take Digbeth in Birmingham,
Yeah.
for instance, is an area where everyone's been talking about it for a long, long time. The profit's already been taken there by other people. In other words, it was built into it probably 10 years ago. Everyone said, oh, you know, Digbeth is going to be, HS2 is eventually going to come. And it's already been committed, if you like, rather than now it's just too late. They always say, don't they, on any different development like that area where it's improving, is never be the first in and never be the last out.
Yeah,
and I think that's quite sensible.
It is
sensible, yeah.
I mean, from my own point of view, I mean, I came to London, I remember 35 years ago, and I mean, I worked down at Tower Bridge, and it was very trendy, very good development down there. Sir Terence Conran was doing. He's now died, unfortunately, but it was very, very good. But you know, it took 25 years for that really to take off and become, and it was the catalyst of the mayor's office that really sort of made it work. But that was 10 or 15 years into the situation.
And that's the biggest, you know, one of the biggest cities in the world with you know, massive resources and lots of people here and everything else.
I think lots of people
critical.
make that mistake. Lots of people will, you know, they'll look at the government infrastructure plans, they'll look at, you know, as we've said before, regeneration, funding, things like that, which is great. You need to focus on that, but that should not be the only reason you're investing in that area.
I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that have invested on Crossrail. And I mean,
too late probably.
I don't know now. Maybe our producer knows, but I don't know how far we are behind with it now. Is it about 4 years?
4 years or something.
You know, so that's going to be a sad blight on the returns, isn't it?
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
There we go.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you for that, Hayley. John, your question. Do the panel think that the COVID trend of leaving the cities and working from home is beginning to reverse? The bigger question may be whether the peripheral businesses like cafes and bars will survive to support city workers.
Interesting question. For me, we've come forward 10 years and 2 years, and we've seen a massive exodus from city centres, from people living in city centres and living in big cities into the country if they can afford to do so. A lot of these people were probably always going to move out, but what they've done, they've sat there during COVID and thought, why don't we do it now rather than wait 5 years' time or 10 years' time? And they've done it. They've moved out. Now, some of those people have suddenly realised, who aren't used to living in the country, well, where am I going to get my cappuccino from?
Well,
where is the nearest upmarket delicatessen?
John, can I just interrupt you? So
yeah, go on, you normally do.
I have to say that in the Evening Standard last night, there was a headline and it said, "We moved to the country.
Yeah.
What a disaster. Where do I get my cappuccino?"
Selfridges, and I hadn't read that because I'm from Suffolk.
Selfridges was 50 miles away.
Yeah.
What on earth have we done?
And a lot
the
of,
idea is nice.
Some of those people have now decided maybe to retain their home in the country, but have a bolt hole in the city, to have a bit of city life, which is interesting. And of course, the people have sold in these cities. People have bought their houses, so it's not everyone's. It's not, you know, people are still buying in cities and towns. But it's certainly, we've seen a movement to bigger gardens, and you know, if you're doing an apartment block, for instance, please try and make sure you've got some outside space, balconies or something like that, because people realise how important it is for mental health now and everything else. Now, like anything, it all goes one way and then it comes back a little bit. And that's what's happening. So working from home is a good example, isn't it? We're talking about, you know, working from home was 75% during the lockdown. You know, there's people who think it's a great idea and want to carry on doing it. It's good for quality of life, good for families and so on, flexibility. So, you know, it's gone from 75 probably back to 25, 30% of people working from home probably. And that's probably, it will settle down at that. But it's a good thing for the environment, less traffic, less car movements and so on. So it's not a bad thing. And a lot of people may do 3 days in London, not 5, and things like that. It was already starting to happen. It's just exaggerated it and moved it forward quicker, I think.
I just don't know what's going to happen to the sort of investment that firms have made. I mean, a lot of the big firms, as solicitors, for instance, have got office blocks here with swimming pools, with restaurants, with shops built in.
Of course, if you're young, if you're young, you want to be in the city, you want that vibrant, you want all those things. But if you're married with children and all the commitments you've got from home, then to be able to work from home 2 or 3 days a week is a godsend to these people, especially with the internet now and everything else. Why shouldn't you?
Data does show that people are coming back to the city centres.
Yeah, they will do to a point.
The demand has started to lift and prices have started to rise as a result.
Yes.
So we always said, didn't we, that while lots of people have moved out, actually when COVID kind of comes to some sort of an end and settles down, you will have a lot of people that will move back. So,
but not everyone. Not everyone.
No, not
and I think we're seeing the
some people are going insane working from home, and cannot wait to get back in the office. So, and we have seen locally as well office space in higher demand and things like that. So I think more and more businesses are thinking about, maybe we made the wrong decision and we're looking for...
I do think you need office interaction to make a company work. You need the input from employees.
I think for young people especially, the older person that's been working in an office for 20, 30 years maybe, the opportunity to work from home for them is probably a godsend, and they don't need to be there. But who's going to train the young people when they start work if everyone's at home? So there's got to be a balance to this. And I think there will be going forward.
I have offices and I went in every single, pretty much every single day, and I don't need to. I could work from home if I want to. So I like to have work.
Well, I had a real problem because most of my time, my office is some coffee shop somewhere. So where they were closed, I was really stuck, Stephen. So, but there we go.
You can come and rent an office.
Yeah, thanks. I can't wait. Yeah, thanks. I can afford your rent.
All your problems solved.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you both for those answers. That's all we've got time for in this half of the show, so join me again after the break.
You are watching Property TV. You are watching Property TV.
Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and with me are Hayley Andrews and John Howard. Welcome back, guys.
Thank you.
Hayley, your second question. If I invest in an HMO through my limited company, will this automatically attract business rates as opposed to investing in my personal name and paying council tax? And presumably there'd be quite a cost difference, wouldn't there?
Yeah, there would be. Well, it depends. I love that word today, don't I?
Yes.
We're relying on you for everything today.
Thank you very much.
Don't know what you've come for, John.
I've answered every question without answering a question so far. No, so whether you pay business rates or council tax has nothing to do with how you buy that property, whether it is in your own personal name or through a limited company structure. Whether you pay it, I think the question was it HMOs?
Yeah.
So a HMO falls under residential, so therefore would be council tax. If you are buying a commercial building, B1, for example, any business, then that will fall under business rates. The grey area, I suppose, is serviced accommodation. Do you pay council tax or do you pay business rates? So it comes down to, has there been a material change of use? Are you operating under residential still? Or do you have a different use classification on that property? And then it would come down to the valuation office. So if you're unsure, just put a check through the valuation office. You can challenge that through there as well, and they will say whether you should be business rates or council tax.
Well, you just mentioned sort of change of use, perhaps. If you bought a commercial building that was paying business rates and then you converted that to residential, would that classification again change with it?
During that phase, you would be liable for business rates until it was residential.
Unless it's uninhabitable, I suppose.
Yeah, unless it's... There are exemptions, of course.
So it just comes down to the habitation.
But you have to still have to pay it, and then you claim it back.
Right.
But the one thing about commercial rates is that for many, many years, whoever's been in government has said they're going to do something about this commercial rates because the rateable value, the rate,
it's archaic.
It's totally archaic. And of course, a lot of rents are in the high streets are coming down dramatically.
Well, they've been dropping for the last 10 years now,
Absolutely.
yet the business rates,
Yeah,
you know, the
haven't.
valuation is still
So
the same.
I'm disappointed with this government so far because they were going to sort this out. And one of the best ways I think to sort it out is to allow it to the rates to be collected when you collect the VAT, when the government collects the VAT, because you can do it on turnover, and you can say, well, you know, 1% of your turnover should be rates. That way, it's much fairer. So if you're doing very well, you probably pay more, and you're doing less. If you're not doing so well, you pay less. That seems a very fair system, and one that I know a number of the MPs are lobbying Rishi Sunak to do. So I hope something's done, because to keep burying everyone's head in the sand on this is wrong.
Well, I think two things there, John. That's the first time I've ever heard you criticise this government.
Well, it's crippling, you know, the high streets.
What can I say?
Yeah.
I'm an honest guy.
But you're right, it does require now fundamental change.
Definitely.
Our high street model has changed.
Yeah.
No longer can the big institution companies start saying, oh, I only want blue chip tenants and one thing
Those
or another,
guys are gone.
because they're not going to find them.
No, they're not.
And turnover of properties has gone up tremendously in commercial
And
world.
short leases. I mean, everyone, you know, the old days, you know, 21-year leases, 25-year leases, 30-year leases. Now, even these big companies won't sign more than 5 years.
Yeah.
No.
It's amazing how it's changed.
No. And I mean, again, the big institutions, their motto at one time was, you know, I want the highest paying tenant for the longest period of time.
And
that doesn't
now
work anymore.
the high streets aren't hot anymore for investment, but the distribution centres are. So all these big distribution centres up and down the motorways, they're the investment. And some of those investments are like 4%, 4.5% yield now, because they know who's going to rent them.
And what does a distribution centre pay? Is it a sort of just a normal commercial rate?
Commercial rates, yeah.
Or do they get concessions?
No.
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 Okay. Well, that is quite interesting, but I'm sure structures are changing and it's needed.
It's needed. It's been needed a long time, and it's a shame that they haven't.
But I always have this worry whether the government are really the right people to work out what to do.
Well, we're in trouble if they're not.
Well, you know, we've had such a succession. How many housing ministers
We've
have we
got a
had
new
now?
one now, and I haven't met him yet, and I can't remember his name.
But that's
I think that's the
13th
13th
in 10 years.
13 in 10
Isn't it
years.
Yeah.
14? No. Is
Could
it?
be 14.
Is it?
I lose count. I can name some of them, but I've met some of them, but not all of them.
It is a huge problem.
Major problem.
Business rates. And I agree, 100%
Needs to be
needs
changed.
to be sorted.
It's
because
archaic.
Yeah.
It just goes against the message that's been put out there, you know.
Yeah.
It just doesn't fit
Just-
this market anymore.
Just as a quick interlude into our programme, you'll have seen in the news this last few weeks a lot of criticism of the government for not controlling very, very badly repaired and maintained properties, particularly in the sort of local housing sector run by councils and housing associations. They're going through a period of exposure at the moment, aren't they, on TV quite heavily.
Yeah.
Do you think the government should be more heavy-handed with local authority landlords?
Well, at the end of the day, most of these landlords, and we're talking about, like you said, local authority and housing associations, they're funded one way or the other through the government. And they get money through the government to maintain these buildings. What can the government do? You know, can they
The same
penalise them in
focus,
some way?
the same focus on
It's
the private
wrong.
rented sector
dreadful.
should be
Yeah.
in line with, you
It's
know,
absolutely
social housing as
dreadful.
well, and unfortunately it's not. And
And
quite
some-
often the quality of accommodation in the private rented sector is higher.
Much higher, much more so now than it
Yeah.
ever was in the past. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Do we think the housing association model perhaps needs changing now?
Well, I think one of the things with housing associations, a lot of them are now selling a lot of their old stock because of the EPCs. They can't get them up to C where they need to be,
Yeah.
and they're building new.
Which is going to be a legal requirement soon.
Going to be
isn't it?
legal
Yeah.
requirement soon. So the cost of bringing them up to C means that they're selling these assets to people like us, and who we can afford to do it somehow, and they can't. I can't. We'll never work that one out. And they're building brand new. So a lot of these housing associations now, almost like house builders, really.
yeah.
It's all changing.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you both for that. Right, John, I am about to buy my first home. but I can't decide whether to buy a new build home or an older property, which often seem to be a little cheaper when making comparisons. Could the experts give me some advice on the pros and cons of each type of
Now
purchase?
you know why you're smiling.
biased.
You know why you're
Answer
smiling.
that question.
and I'm going to be very, very honest, and as I always try to be, and straightforward. Currently, there is about a 15% difference between a second-hand home, pro rata to square footage, and a new home. And there's only one reason for that, really. Two reasons. One, you get a 10-year warranty on a new home, so it's a bit like buying a new car. But the second thing is the Help to Buy scheme, which you don't like very much. I appreciate. We've discussed this on a few occasions, Stephen, but it's helped something like 700,000 people now in the UK, mainly first-time buyers. It's ceasing in April 2023, but it's helped a huge number of people get on the housing ladder. But because of that, and because the properties had to be refurbished or new, it has created a two-tier market. So if you want a bit of value, I would go second-hand. If you want it all brand new, and I know someone very close to me is buying a brand new car shortly and likes it all brand new, and I understand that, Stephen, why you want a brand new car. But of course, you could have chosen a car 2 years old, but you haven't done. You've chosen a brand new one. And you know that there's going to be probably a slight drop in the value, but you're happy to do that. And the same with a lot of people who buy brand new. People must appreciate, if you're buying a brand new house, you are paying
a premium
for that. Now, recently, that premium, and there's been no drop in the price. But if you buy a property early on in a development,
or very late, then you might find that the second-hand values are less to start with the first year or two. John, I don't have a difficulty with, in principle, with a help to buy scheme.
Good, it's a fantastic scheme.
I think that's great. Well, I'm not sure whether
helped a lot of developers. Thank you very much.
It did help, I think, more developers than it did purchasers.
Well,
but I think the other thing is, I know you quote the figure, it's helped 700,000
Yes.
people.
Yes.
I think you have to ask the next question, which would be, how many of those 700,000 wouldn't have bought if there wasn't the Help to Buy scheme?
I would say over half of those people couldn't. Remember, 400,000 people last year came onto the housing ladder in the UK. 400,000 people. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
And
what other country can say that?
And how many new homes did we build?
Well, we build 230,000 new homes a year.
So there's going to be 170,000 shortfall
we
then,
need
which
to
will push
build,
the prices up
in my
even
view,
more.
we need to build 500,000.
Yeah.
I agree.
The government say it's 300. It's not. It's 500,000. They're trying to get it up to 300,000, but it's controlled by the 10 large house builders. They control the market. They control 70% of the market. So they're not going to flood the market with too many houses, because they don't want the prices going down.
I think in today's market right now, and again, this is just being impartial, buying new build is dangerous, I think. Even with the Help to Buy, because you could be stuck with a property with any fluctuations in the marketplace. You could be stuck with a property, you're tied to that mortgage, and you may struggle to sell or exit that.
Well, you're right, because you see, if there's a 15% premium to start with, and the market dips 15%.
Same as when you drive your car off the car lot, it loses value.
Assuming I can afford it at the time.
But you're paying for the luxury, aren't you?
You are paying for having brand new, smooth, easy, but also don't forget, no maintenance for a few years as well. And that has an effect on people.
Right. Okay. Well, on that note, I have to go to end the show there. We're out of time, John. So sorry about that. But thank you both very much. So that's John Howard. Thank you, and Hayley.
Pleasure.
Evans, thank you very much indeed. That's all we've got time for today. So join us next time on Property Question Time.